It's been a bumper news week, and if you've missed anything, well, you're in good hands. Welcome to Weekend One, the show that helps you catch up with the top news stories and interviews featured on ENCA over the past 7 days. I'm Abigail Visagie. Let's get straight into this week's top stories. The Health Ombudsman releases shocking findings into the state of Rahima Musa Hospital. The latest on the public sector strike. Police Minister Bheki Cele says measures are in place to avoid a repeat of 2021's deadly July unrest. The Nehau strike saw thousands of health workers down tools last week in a bid to compel government to agree to cave in on the demand of a 10% wage increase. While many have accepted the 7% wage offer, others call it an insult. ENCA's Mangoba Mqunu compiled this report.
These are some of the scenes at hospitals across the country as workers' anger spilled on to the streets. But despite several court interdicts by provincial health departments on the violent strikes, Nehau insists the protests will continue.
With this arrogance displayed by government, it is important to confirm that Nehau continues with the strike in a more intensified manner as from tomorrow, Monday, the 13th March 2023, to demonstrate to government the seriousness with which we take the concerted efforts to underplay the role and the significance of public servants who are at the coalface of service delivery.
But it's the patients who've borne the brunt of the strike, with hundreds turned away last week. Health Minister Dr. Joe Phaahla saying 4 deaths could be directly linked to the strike action. But Nehau is having none of it and insists they are not to blame.
The department must not run away from their responsibility. The state is responsible to provide healthcare service because it's our constitutional rights as citizens. So the state must take full responsibility of any incident that would have occurred.
Meanwhile, Nehau say they remain resolute on their demand of a 10% wage increase. Mangoba Mqunu, Johannesburg.
The public sector wage strike is far from over, and even though Nehau has instructed all its members in healthcare facilities to return to work, non-essential workers are continuing the strike. Their return follows Monday's Labour Court judgment, but other government departments are still being affected. Back to work for government employees who are regarded as essential workers as per the Labour Court ruling. But it was a different scenario for some in KwaDabeka Community Healthcare Centre. Healthcare workers were blocked from entering by heavily armed private security officials who'd been allegedly sent to guard government infrastructure.
People who refused workers to enter here was that heavily armed security personnel, and the CEO was very, very clear that is not against workers entering in, and himself he was not aware where these people are coming from.
Meanwhile, court workers continued the strike. But as they entered day 7, it was time to understand the implication of the no work and no pay policy for their income.
Staggered into 4 months. Ushothi uzobanjwa inyanga ezine. Ake ngithi bekufanele ubanjelwe imali 800. Bazothatha unyanga oqala u200 ngesibili kube u200 kuze kugcine kwenele u800. Izohlukanisa inyanga ezine ukuze kungezweli kumsebenzi.
And as negotiators asked for the protection of the collective bargaining, it seemed the outcome will come with a 24-hour request for workers to get back to their duties.
To the story now, Nehau has decided to suspend its strike action over wages. This after reaching an in-principle settlement with government over its members' pay for 2022. Government has also increased its pay rise offer from 4.7% to 7% for the 2023 to 2024 year. Perhaps talk us through what has been agreed upon in principle.
It is correct that we have called off the strike following the signing of the settlement agreement between us and government, the unions that were in dispute. Now, the agreement paves the way for us to finalize the residual issues emanating from the 2022 dispute. You remember that we're arguing that the government should not have imposed the 3% and can't decide alone what is good for workers, and they've been refusing to engage. So we have now agreed that that matter must be reopened and must be discussed as part of the current wage negotiations for 2023-24.
Okay.
Secondly, we have now agreed that it's about time the issue of minimum service level agreement is finalized for purpose of managing the challenges of essential services. This matter has been outstanding since 2010. So the agreement says it must be completed within 6 months so that we don't have to deal with these challenges of essential services going forward.
Police Minister Abigail says measures are in place to avoid a repeat of 2021's deadly July unrest. In that incident, more than 300 people were killed in week-long running battles with police. Ahead of the planned EFF protest on Monday, Abigail says officers will be deployed across the country to quell any signs of volatility. ENCA's Heidi Jokos has the details.
It's business as usual come Monday, 20 March. This is according to Police Minister Abigail. A planned nationwide shutdown is expected to take place on Monday by the EFF. The country's security cluster says there is no need to panic and citizens should go about their day as normal.
I want to assure everyone in the country that the 20th of March will be a normal business day. We want to reiterate to our international community that contrary to the pronouncement by those advocating for any disruption, all ports of entry, land, sea and air will be operational. Measures have been put in place to ensure that everyone who wants to go to work, travel for leisure and conduct business on this day does so in a safe and secured environment.
The SANDF will be on standby should things get out of control.
We are on standby. You have also asked about the capacity. I think the Minister of Police is very coy. Not only does he, unlike us, continue to recruit youngsters who we think are fit, he does have the reserves. So I think he does have capacity.
There are concerns that there will be a repeat of the July unrest that took place in 2021, but government says the situation is under control.
Today you have listened, there is synchronity of what we are saying and the plans that are in place, and anyone can take any question because we are coordinating. Part of the weakness that was identified was the lack of coordination from the security cluster, and I can assure you that the coordination is 500% improved from the previous experience.
We are prepared, we are ready, as we have assured South Africans that we are working on those matters better than previous.
The country's biggest taxi association says it will not partake in any shutdown. SAFTU has said it will be joining in on Monday. The point of the shutdown is to call for the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa and an end to rolling blackouts. It's not yet clear on the magnitude of the shutdown, but government has called for calm and says it will not tolerate any threats or intimidation. Heidi Jokos in Pretoria.
Stay tuned to Weekend One. Coming up, we take a look at some of the big interviews done by our anchors this week. Welcome back to Weekend One. I'm Abigail Visagie. Now, in the wake of the report by the Health Ombudsman on the Rahima Musa Hospital, ENCA anchor Sally Burdett spoke to Professor Adam Muhammad, head of internal medicine at the Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, regarding his take on the findings.
Your response to the report, do you see this as complete vindication for Tim de Meyer and other whistleblowers?
Good evening, and thank you for having me on your show. It's actually a strike for advocacy, a strike for honesty and transparency, and a salute to Dr. Tim de Meyer and those that supported him to stand up for what was right. The brushing aside, the intimidation from Gauteng Department of Health to these doctors and healthcare workers has now been quietened, and I hope officially this will not be the end of doctors standing up, and it highlights how honest and accurate he painted the picture and the sad state of affairs at Rahima Musa, which is a reflection of the entire southern Gauteng region.
So we're sitting with a 6-year-old report that was never implemented. What do you think needs to happen now to give real meaning to these reports, to create action?
I think people must be held accountable. Too many times we have meetings, we have reports, we have disciplinary issues, we have suspensions, we have resignations, but the core essence of patient care, healthcare workers, nurses, general assistants always remain the same and continue with their hands tied and their eyes closed to deliver service. There is not a single person who has been held accountable or responsible for the shenanigans that has happened at Rahima Musa, and it's still ongoing. Don't think that this report has made any change. I can assure you the report still stands as fresh as today from what happened 6 months ago, and there's no improvement. They're still under problems, they're understaffing, there's still dirt. The boreholes were put up by gift of the givers in a big urban metropolitan center. Good public-private partnership, but whose responsibility it is? And that report is shocking. It highlights every level of that hospital being dysfunctional, of administration. And nothing has happened to date except a transfer to a higher position in provincial government as a reward for being dysfunctional.
The DA has officially filed papers in the North Gauteng High Court against the EFF's planned national shutdown next Monday. The EFF is demanding an end to the electricity crisis and the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. ENCA anchor Dan Moyane spoke to the DA leader, John Steenhuisen, about this.
What are these legal steps that you are taking?
Well, Dan, what we're going to be doing, and let me be clear, we're not trying to prevent the EFF from marching. That is their democratic right to do so. But it has to be a balance of rights that people who do not want to participate and do not want to shut down on the day should not be prevented, threatened, or intimidated from doing so. So we're approaching the court to make sure that all municipal and legal requirements are met for the application for these marches, and that all those steps are followed. Secondly, that the EFF will be held personally responsible should there be violence, looting, and damage to public or private infrastructure. And thirdly, to get the letters that they've issued to places like OR Tambo, to institutions, big corporates, declared unlawful and have them withdrawn. It's not acceptable to go around to businesses threatening that if they don't shut down on the day, there are going to be consequences for them. Participation in the march is one thing. We've done many marches, we've done many protests and pickets, and it has to be conducted peacefully and in a way which does not impede the rights of other people who do not want to associate with that march. Unfortunately, we've seen some very, very angry posts on social media. We've seen commentary from EFF leaders and the like, threatening people that if they don't shut down or if they go to school or go to work, there are going to be serious consequences for them. And I don't think that's acceptable.
I don't know if you're aware, earlier today, EFF issuing a statement saying that your efforts to these legal steps are anti-democratic, publicity stunt, that you are frivolous. I'm quoting from their statement. You are misguided and you are racist. How do you respond to the EFF?
Well, it's obviously the typical standard stock response from the EFF, but one only needs to look at the commentary made by Julius Malema very publicly yesterday, and the letters that they've actually been serving on businesses and the threats they've been making. This is a real, clear and present threat to these individual businesses, these operations. This is not something the DA is making up. Seeing them, Mpumalanga leader, for instance, on social media brandishing a semi-automatic weapon and saying by any means necessary. This is not the type of thing we need in South Africa. We need law and order, not the politics of chaos. The EFF are welcome to march. They can march every day of the year if they want. They can march wherever and whenever they want to. But this must be done in a peaceful manner because that's what the Constitution says very clearly. These rights are not absolute. They're balanced out by making sure that the rights of others are also not impeded during these processes.
Multi-award-winning South African musician Gloria Bosman has died aged 50. The Soweto-born singer was known for her versatile voice and was celebrated for her ability to transcend different genres. ENCA's Lindelo Masekane spoke to her long-term friend and fellow musician, Sipho Hotsticks Mabuse.
Our deepest condolences. I can imagine the news has taken you, of course, by shock, as well as the entire nation feeling those sentiments as well.
Thank you. Good day, Leah. You know, it's a very sad day for this country. Very, very, very sad day. And I don't even know how to describe how I'm feeling. Maybe today I've managed to overcome my pain and go through, you know, overnight, just trying to understand what it could have been, what it was, why. When Gloria's, you know, star was just beginning to shine even more than what she'd been all these years. And when I heard the news, I was actually driving, and I had to drive onto the side of the road and, you know, and stop my car, take a deep breath, and imagine, you know, trying to believe whether it's true. And indeed, when I went to her house, it was true that Gloria has gone.
Maybe then talk to me about when you met and your fondest memories with her.
You know, I used to run a jazz club called Kippies, and the Market Theatre was the center of interaction with all the artists and everybody there. And Gloria had performed along with Dr. John Carney. They were doing a show called The Lion and the Lamb, so, yeah, if I recall. And her voice was soaring. I didn't even realize that she was going to be a jazz musician. And I asked her if she'd like to perform at Kippies, and she was looking forward to coming to perform at Kippies. And indeed, she came in. But you know how she presented herself? She walked onto the stage. She wasn't wearing shoes. She was just wearing this black dress. And she did a song called Amakwati and Sombao. Woo! Gloria, you know, when I think about those moments, my heart just goes.
Coming up after the break, a 4-year-old girl is found dead in a pit toilet in the Eastern Cape. Welcome back to Weekend One. I'm Abigail Visagie. Now, there has been a huge uproar following the death last week of Langalam Viki, whose body was discovered in a preschool pit toilet in the Eastern Cape. Amnesty International South Africa says it hopes this incident will be a wake-up call to government to take urgent action in eradicating pit toilets. ENCA's Ronald Masinda has the latest.
Langalam Viki's body was discovered inside the septic tank on Tuesday. Her grandfather, Buzakban Makyobi, suspects that there was foul play involved.
Ukuba bendikho nam isela belingamthatha ndikho because kwimoto esibhangapha kwezibhangapha kwezilayishayo kulaa phithiphithi iyenzeke loo nto nepicture ye-private school ngelaa xesha lokuphithizelo lilonke ke tata asinamntu sithi ubani ukuba loo mntu khona uthixo uzayivelisa loo nto asithandabuze.
The family raised concerns about the child's disappearance after she didn't return home after she was last seen at school. Her grandfather says it was unlikely that the pit toilets were going to be eradicated after they were only built in 2016.
Eza sikolo zokhweza toilet ngo-2016 into ibindenza ndingahoyi ziyityamoso za toilet kodwa ngowuthe awufumaneka umntana xa ndijonga i-blood bucket system leya yamabhakethi kolaa hlobo yenziwa ngalo ayile yensimbi yona isilenda. Nawe wena ngongumntu omdala uba kukho abantu abacinga ububi ngawe, more especially umuntu ongutata, bangakubamba bakuthathe bakufake phaa because awuzucinga ukukhala, into azayoyenza kukulwa ube ubhubhile.
The Eastern Cape Education Department says while it's conducting its own investigation, the matter is also with the police.
We can say that investigation is with the South African Police Service because there's an inquest that they are busy with, and we are believing that in due time they will come back to the department and convey what they would have came up with.
Langalam Vicky will be laid to rest this weekend. Her death has ignited growing calls for these toilets to be finally eradicated in schools. Ronald Masinda, Kakadu.
The Water and Sanitation Department is set to hold a meeting with Electricity Minister Josienzo Ramakgopa. The meeting is aimed at exempting water treatment plants and pump stations from power cuts. Many communities across Gauteng have been battling dry taps in recent weeks as aging infrastructure and blackouts hamper water availability. ENCA senior reporter Abigail Visagie filed this report.
For the last few weeks, this is the only source of water that residents of Cliffontein View have access to as the taps have dried up. This has not only impacted their livelihoods, but some businesses have suffered as well.
Kawashi singathi vele into is affected kakhulu yamanzi because sewusine about 3 weeks singana manzi. Vele amanzi sometimes sizama ukwakha lapho emfowethu ukuthi sikhona ukuwasha imoto. So business is affected kakhulu.
It has not been communicated because we have a hall. They called people, they called the community to tell us the situation. But since in 2 weeks, these 2 weeks, nothing has happened. We have not been told about the water or when it's going to come back or what is the issue.
While dam levels are filled to capacity, the Water and Sanitation Department says the biggest challenge is the aging infrastructure and the ongoing load-shedding woes.
Municipalities in Gauteng, all of them combined, they lose about 20 to 25% of their water once they receive it in their pipes. Now that's problem number one that must be fixed. This means that we need to fix all the leaks, municipality by municipality, and we have agreed on that.
We are going to have an urgent meeting with the Minister of Electricity. In that urgent meeting with the Minister of Electricity, many mechanisms are going to be explored. How do we actually mitigate the issues of load shedding around the question of water supply and sanitation services?
While there are promises to add additional water reservoirs that will help such communities, the plea for them is that all of this is tackled with urgency. Abigail Visagie, Johannesburg.
Filthy, neglected and unsafe. Those are the words used to describe the Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital. The Health Ombudsman released shocking findings following an investigation. The hospital was under scrutiny after Dr. Tim de Meyer penned an open letter decrying its conditions. ENCA's senior reporter Slindelo Masekane has more.
Various allegations ranging from poor treatment of patients, staff and bed shortages have been leveled against the Rahima Musa Mother and Child Hospital. In 2022, a video of pregnant women sleeping on the floor went viral. A year-long investigation by the Health Ombudsman has found that all these allegations are true.
Almost all the people that we interviewed confirmed that that was the case. So we couldn't obviously ignore that. Then there was the confirmation that obviously the CEO did not spend as much time as he was supposed to.
Now that we know what the problems are, is there a plan to address them?
We're going to be tighter on interviews. Who is fit to be the CEO? Even the interviews that are going to be done, I'm going to manage that because I'm the last one to sign there. It must be the people that we know that they are capable, they qualify, they are going to do what is expected. We've tightened some controls in all the hospitals.
Healthcare professionals say the Gauteng Health Department needs to take accountability.
this is just a tip of the iceberg. You know, there's a lot that is happening in the hospitals, not only Rahima Musa, it's just that Tim DeMaio was strong enough to just come out and write an open letter.
There's a tendency to recycle CEOs. You take a CEO from Rahima Musa, you take him or her to Helen Joseph, or you move them to Sterkfontein Hospital. So that has been the trend that the department has been doing for the past years.
There are calls for the hospital's CEO to be axed.
I think she should be fired, and there is a recommendation that she goes through a disciplinary process. So yes, the primary responsibility is the Gauteng Health Department. It's not just this hospital.
Some of the recommendations also include upgrades to the security system and strengthening oversight at all Gauteng hospitals. Slinda Lomasigan, Pretoria.
And that's the end of this week's edition of Weekend One. We play out with a tribute to jazz legend Gloria Bosman, who is being laid to rest this weekend. From myself and the team, have a great weekend. Take care.